now, brother. Your memories, your roots, your cinema, your kings. No breaks. Just a real-time journey through your words. Growing up in the 1980s was something else. Indonesia at that time, it wasn't just a place. It was a vibe. The smell of burning wood in the morning, the sound of roosters and transistor radios. And we, the kids of that decade, had something the world didn't quite understand. We were hungry. Hungry for action, hungry for stories, hungry for heroes. Bruce Lee was the fire. He wasn't just famous, he was a god to us. We watched Enter the Dragon like it was gospel. And when Jackie Chan started rising, he became our comic warrior. He'd get beat up and smile through the pain. We loved that. That was us. Indonesia was full of bruises, but we laughed anyway. Then came Hiroyuki Sanada from Japan. Slick, dangerous, calm like water, but deadly like a blade. We didn't need subtitles. We just watched the movement, and we knew. Movies were everything. VHS tapes passed around like sacred things. Sometimes we'd gather at one neighbor's house, 15 of us kids huddled on the floor, eyes wide, mouth open. That was cinema in the tropics. Sweat, flickering screens, and Bruce Lee's scream echoing across the kampung. But it wasn't just foreign action stars that shaped us. We had something ancient, something spiritual, something called opera, or para-opera, a Batak tradition, a stage made of wood and cloth and passion, where old warriors came back to life under the night sky, lit by kerosene lamps and village memory. They'd retell the story of Raja Sisingamangaraja XII, the last king, the lion of the Batak, our king. He didn't sit on a golden throne or live in a marble palace. His throne was the mountain. His castle was the soul of the people. His enemies? The Dutch, the invaders, the ones who tried to rewrite our story. The opera would show him riding out, fearless, into battle, dressed in red, black, and white, our sacred colors. Red for courage, black for the supernatural, white for the purity of his mission, and beside him his daughter, his pride, his blood, fighting like a spirit. They say she died in Diary, right next to my hometown. So close you can still hear the wind whisper his name if you listen at night. You don't just know Sisingamangaraja, you feel him. You see him on our money, 1,000 rupiah note, printed with his proud face and that unmistakable Batak stare. You see his name on streets across Indonesia, from Medan to Jakarta, Jalan Sisingamangaraja. Even in places that have forgotten their own kings, his name still lives. But what made him different? He didn't rule from a throne. He ruled from tradition. His law was not written. It was remembered. He didn't wear gold. He wore the blood of his people, to have the silence of their struggles and the fire of their resistance. He was the Lion King, not in a Disney sense, but in a tribal, spine-deep, ancestors whisper through the drumbeat kind of way. That's why, for us, the 1980s weren't just about pop culture and karate kicks. It was about identity. It was about being Batak in a time when everything around us was trying to modernize, westernize, sterilize our fire. We had Bruce Lee in our heads, but we had Sisingamangaraja in our blood. That was the balance. That was the era. That was us. Every now and then, well, every year actually, we'd celebrate his birthday. Raja Sisingamangaraja XII, the Lion King of the Batak, not the cartoon, the real one, the rebel, the last roar against the Dutch. And on that day, like it was sacred tradition, we'd mark ourselves. Some of us with white chalk in the ear, others with a streak across the forehead. As kids, we didn't always understand it. We just knew it meant something big. That white mark meant we are his blood, his people, his descendants, or maybe just his subjects. No one ever told us clearly, but the feeling, it was real. We'd hear stories, whispers passed down, never written, about how he fought, how he bled, how he never surrendered. We'd wear that chalk like a badge and walk a little taller that day, even if our shirts were torn and our shoes didn't match, because where we came from, hierarchy matters deeply. It's not about class, it's about lineage, about knowing where you stand, who you're tied to, whose name you carry. You might not have money, you might not have power, but if you carry the blood of the Lion King, you walk like you belong. See, people don't always get it, especially outsiders. They see Indonesia as just beaches and Bali postcards. They don't see the tribal network underneath it all. We're not just a country. We're a living web of clans, marga, lineages, codes, and sacred allegiances. That's why, if anyone out there thinks they can just start a fight with Indonesians, better think twice. You're not just fighting a man, You're fighting his entire line, his clan, his uncles, his cousins, his grandmother who raised him with fire in her eyes. You think you're punching one guy, but you just declared war on a 1,000-year-old tribe. And that's not something you win. Because to us, family isn't just people. It's protection. It's identity. It's history. And when you touch one, you touch all. So yeah, every year we'd wear that white chalk like it was armor. Because it was a mark of who we are, where we come from, and who we will always defend. Even if we don't always say it out loud. Even if we've forgotten the words, the blood remembers. Let me know, unfiltered, just like a voice from the street passed through smoke and silence. This is your story, your memory, woven with the ghost of a nation. I've been telling you the story about my childhood, but if you tilt your head just slightly, you'll see it wasn't that far from what came before. 1965, 67, 68, those weren't ancient history to us. They were the murmurs still echoing in the back alleys, still hanging in the kitchens, still stuck between teeth like unswallowed truth. You see, where I grew up, the talk never really stopped. It just went quiet, like a wound under the shirt. Sometimes you'd catch it in the old men's sighs, sometimes in the way a mother would suddenly hush her children if they asked the wrong question. There was always a secret in the air, a thick one, a kind of invisible fog. For some, it was unbearable not to talk about it. For others, it was unbearable to remember. Everyone had a reason to be quiet. Everyone had a reason to forget or pretend to. But we knew. We knew there was a place, Pulau Buru. Buru Island. They said it like it was a curse. That was the name whispered with fear. Not because of ghosts, because of what the government turned it into. It wasn't just an island. It was Indonesia's own Alcatraz, the graveyard of the living. The place where they dumped the unwanted, the unbendable, the ones who stood up when the rest bowed down. Buru wasn't for thieves, it wasn't for murderers, no, it was for thinkers, for poets, teachers, journalists, farmers. Anyone who dared to hold a different view than the regime, anyone who wore the wrong color in 1965, anyone accused, real or not, of being PKI, communist, rebel, anti-Pancasila, anyone who didn't bow to US and them. And when I say them, I mean the puppets. The ones who replaced Sukarno with Suharto, the ones who smiled in suits while the rivers ran red. Pulau Buru became their island of silence. You got sent there without trial, no defense, no lawyer, just a name on a list and a bag on your back. And once you got there, the only thing that grew was hunger, disease, and time. They made the prisoners build their own prisons, cut the jungle, plant the rice, survive off scraps, and still they sang. Still they resisted. Still they remembered who they were. Some of those men never came back. Some came back, but not the same. And some, even decades later, still carry the number burned into their soul. That's what people don't get. 1965 didn't end in 1965. It bled through the 70s, through the 80s, right into my own street, my own friends, my own teachers. I grew up in a town shadowed by silence, smiles hiding fear, laughter with the volume turned down, because you never knew who was listening. You never knew who had papers. That's why I never forget Pulau Buru. That's why I remember when people talk about justice as if it's only something found in courts. In my country, justice was buried with the truth. And the ones who tried to dig it up, they were sent to an island and told to rot. Understand how deep it all ran. I didn't realize how the past could reach into your future without asking permission. I didn't know a song could put a target on your back. I didn't know silence could be louder than a scream. But now, looking back, I remember. There was this song, Ginger Ginger. I can still hear it. The melody, the repetition. Ginger, a simple folk tune. But by the time I was growing up, it wasn't just a song anymore. It was a weapon, a whisper, a warning. Originally, it came from Banyuwangi, about poor women picking water spinach to survive. A song of the people, of hunger, of struggle. But in the years following 1965, that song became branded, labeled, marked. They said it was communist. They said it was dangerous. And just like that, Ginger Ginger became a ghost with a soundtrack. If you sang it too loud, you were suspicious. If you refused to sing it, you were still suspicious. That's how crazy the time was. You could get in trouble either way, not because of what they thought you meant. Art, music, even laughter, all of it had codes in it. And if you misstepped, even without knowing, the shadow would find you. We were kids, man. We didn't know politics. We knew rhythm. We knew when the grown-ups tensed up. We knew when a song started and someone shut it off quick. We knew what it meant when the radio went quiet mid-melody. And still, Genjer Genjer echoed in the back of our minds. You see, that's what made Indonesia so strange during those years. You could lose your life over a folk song, over a red shirt, over a name your father once signed on a paper. You didn't have to be guilty. You just had to exist in the wrong corner of a memory. So yeah, it was a crazy place, a crazy time, but it was real, and we lived through it. There was always a part of us, part of the community, that learned to live by rules we didn't even realize existed. They weren't written on signs, they weren't taught in school, but they were there. Silent laws, invisible fences. And if you crossed one without knowing, you'd find out quick. Every 5 years, like clockwork, the campaign season would come. And it was a party. Flags waving, trucks blaring music, banners with smiling faces plastered across the market walls, drums, dancing, shouting. Every corner turned into a stage. To us kids, it was exciting. To the grown-ups, it was routine. Big energy, big show, big promises. But deep down, we all knew the ending before the opening act began. Because no matter how many parties came marching through the streets, we always chose the same president. And not just chose, obeyed, feared. He was already chosen before the campaign even began. We were just playing along, pretending, like it was a real democracy. Like our voices had weight. Like it wasn't already decided in some back room, some military office, some foreign embassy with a clean-suited man holding a cigarette and shaking the right hand. It was a strange time, a weird time. We celebrated choice while living without one, and yet we still cheered, still danced, still put up the posters. Because in Indonesia, we learned early how to survive with a smile. We learned how to nod along with a truth we never believed. We knew how to participate in theater without being the actors. We were just in the audience, watching, clap, hoping the spotlight didn't turn our way. That was life under the strong man. That was politics made into puppetry. And somehow, we made it work. We lived. We adapted. We remembered the rules that were never spoken. Because not knowing them, that's what really got you in trouble. Your requested narrative formatted as a continuous voice-style story, reflecting on his 33-year grip on power, the legacy of fear, and the controlled chaos of Indonesia under his regime. They say his name like a monument, Suharto. But for us, the people who lived under his shadow for 33 years, he wasn't a monument. He was a storm behind a smile, a shadow that reached every home, a silence that shaped every word we dared to speak. Suharto didn't just rule Indonesia, he owned it. From 1966 to 1998, his face was everywhere and nowhere at once. Not loud like a dictator, but quieter, more dangerous. He was the master of the unspoken, of secrets, of disappearing without the need to shout. And when I say 33 years in power, I don't just mean a long presidency. I mean entire generations were born and raised, never knowing another leader. You'd wake up in 1973 and fall asleep in 1995, and nothing changed. Same face, same power, same game. Every 5 years there was a campaign. Big party, big posters, big flags, the illusion of choice. We would scream and march in the streets like we believed it was real. But we all knew. Suharto would win, he always won, because the game was fixed from the start. He ran the country like a military barracks. Loyalty came before justice. Silence came before truth. He built the illusion of unity on the bones of fear. If you disagreed, you vanished. If you questioned, you were marked. And if your father was PKI, you didn't even get a chance. Pulau Buru, Tanjung Priok, Santa Cruz, Timor-Leste, all of them soaked in blood, written off as security operations. But we knew, we all knew. And behind it all, that famous letter. Super Semar, the so-called Surat Perintah 11 Maret, the March 11th Order, the document that allegedly handed power from Sukarno to Suharto. Was it forged, coerced? Does it even exist in its original form? No one really knows. That's the game. That's the myth. What we do know is this. One day Sukarno was the father of the nation, and the next he was a ghost. And Suharto stepped in with the military behind him and the West in his pocket. Because Suharto wasn't just Indonesia's strongman. He was America's man. The Cold War was raging, and the US didn't care how many lives were lost, as long as Indonesia stayed red-free. And Suharto delivered with brutal efficiency. 500,000 to 1 million people gone in the purge. Teachers, artists, peasants branded as communists, buried without names. Entire villages lived in fear, not just of dying, but of being remembered wrong. And while the killings continued, the Western world handed him awards, loans, aid, investments. The smiling general, they called him. He smiled while people disappeared. He smiled while Chinese Indonesians were beaten in the streets during the May 1998 riots. He smiled while his children became billionaires, controlling everything from rice distribution to television networks. Tommy Suharto, Tutut, Bambang. Their names became brands of corruption. Untouchable, arrogant, protected by the name, the family business of dictatorship. Suharto bled the country dry and called it stability. And when the people finally rose, Jakarta burning, students storming parliament, bodies piling in front of Trisakti University, he stepped down. Not with justice, not with apology, just stepped down. And no court ever touched him, no jail cell ever held him. He died surrounded by family, forgiven by institutions too afraid to confront their own silence. But we remember. We remember the fear in our parents' eyes when they told us not to speak. We remember the sound of boots at night. We remember the weight of knowing that one wrong word, one wrong friendship, one wrong song could mark your entire family. 33 years. That's not just history. That's a scar we wear with every breath.